if I may, I'll take the start then. Okay, hi, I'm Tom White. Welcome to Angular Sussex. Tonight we're lucky enough to have a GDE presenting to us. Okay, we've got Aristeidis Bampakos. Did I pronounce that okay, Aris?
Absolutely, Tom. You pronounced it just fine. But you know that you can call me Aris if you want because it's shorter, but it's okay.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thanks very much for this invitation. I'm very happy to be here, especially to a meetup from UK because, you know, I have studied 4 years in the UK. I was in Portsmouth and in Birmingham, and I have really very good memories from my time there. So thanks.
Good to have you. Yeah, please feel free to kick off when you're ready.
Okay. All right. I think my screen is okay. So, hello everyone. My name is Aristeidis Bampakos, as Tom White, but you can call me Aris. Today I'm going to talk to you about a book that I have written, which is the latest book that I have written. I have already written one. And I will try to give you a sneak preview of each chapter so that if you want to purchase it, you know exactly what you will get from each chapter. I will try not to make any spoilers because, you know, it's a book that you can't buy. So let's get started. Some things about me. I'm a Google developer expert for Angular, and I work as a front-end web developer at Plexit. I'm from Greece. I live in Athens, and I'm also I co-organize a meetup here in Athens, which is called Angular Athens, just like the Angular Sussex that we are currently. I also work as a senior Angular instructor at CodeHub, which is a private institute where we teach the Angular framework to other developers and individuals. As you can see from from the flag behind me, I'm a very huge fan of the Assassin's Creed game. But unfortunately, the last 2 years, I didn't have time to play my favorite game because I was an author. I was authoring books for back publishing. So today, I'm very happy to announce that I will give away a promotional code for my latest book, which is called Angular Project Second Edition. Now, this book is destined for beginners, for developers that are already beginners in Angular, and they want to deep dive into more advanced topics. Each chapter is a different project. So, for example, we have one chapter if you want to learn server-side rendering with Angular, another chapter how to build a mobile application using Ionic. So each chapter is a different project. My book is officially, of course, released. So how can you get your promo code? You will log in to pactpub.com, www.pactpub.com, and you will search for the title Angular Projects Second Edition, which is the title of the book. Then you will click on a link. I will show you how to do it later. You will click on a link which is that says buy ebook, because this promotional code is only for ebooks and only to purchase it from PactPub. And then you will enter the code which is ARIS30 and you will get a 30% discount from the ebook. Now pay attention that this offer is valid from today until, yes, Tom?
I was just wondering, Aris, would you mind posting into the chat that URL and the code?
I will show you how to do it live.
Thank you. Lovely.
All right. So this offer will be valid from today until 11th of August 2021. So let me show you how you will do it. Okay, so you navigate to pactpub.com.
Are you screen sharing?
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, it's not coming to me.
That's better now.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
Oh,
So
it's gone now.
this is,
Yeah,
you're supposed to,
Sorry,
What?
Aris, the screen shares stopped again.
why?
It was very brief. Popped up for a second.
Okay, it's there now.
Okay. So it is supposed that you will have a PactPub account. So if you don't have, you can create one. You log into your account and then you search for Angular projects. Here it is. And then you click on this link which says buy the ebook. And in this text field, you will enter the promotional code and you will apply the discount. And then you can proceed with the checkout. I will share the link of the book now in the chat so that you don't need to find it. Oops, sorry. Something was going on with my setup today. Okay. So I think that was clear how to get the promotional code, right? So the book is, the title of the book is Angular Project Second Edition. So what do we mean with second edition? The first edition was not written by me. Just want to make it clear. So another person wrote the first edition of the book. So I went and wrote the second edition, which is completely different from the second edition. I just wanted to say that, to state that, so that it is clear that I have not written the first edition. Now, I have already written one book with Angular, which is called Learning Angular, which is more theoretically, and it is not, it gives you some basics of the Angular framework. But you know, I was very lucky because I managed to write 2 books inside this whole situation with pandemic, because I started writing on December of 2019, my first one, and then right after I finished it, I just started writing the second one, which is this one. The structure of the book is, as I said, more technical. For example, each chapter, it contains one very small paragraph for the theory of the tools that each chapter uses, and then it starts to guide you how to build the project. At the end of each chapter, usually there are some practice questions that you can that you need to answer, and I think on 2 of the chapters there are some exercises that you can take, and the solutions are already on the GitHub repository of the book, because this book comes together with a GitHub repository with a code. So when you get the book, you get the code also, which you can download it or take it from the GitHub repository. So what is the purpose of the Angular projects book that I have written? Actually, I wanted to mention the main pillars of the Angular platform, which is the cross-platform, because Angular is a cross-platform framework. It is very easy to onboard someone and start using it, and the incredible tooling that it contains. So when we say cross-platform, actually Angular is not cross-platform by its nature. It's the community that makes it cross-platform. For example, there are many libraries that allows you to integrate into your Angular application and render your application to the server using the Angular Universal, or use the progressive web app, the Angular Service Worker, that allows you to run your Angular application as a progressive web application, or even there are two frameworks for mobile application, for creating mobile applications, NativeScript and Ionic. In the book, I cover the Ionic framework, not the NativeScript. The second pillar of the Angular framework, it is how easy it is to onboard someone to the Angular framework, right? The Angular framework consists of a set of very distinct libraries that you can put into your project whenever you want to accomplish something. For example, if you want to interact with a REST API, you just grab the built-in HTTP client library. Or if you want to work with forms, you can get the Angular Reactive Forms and plug it into your application. So this architecture of plugging each library separately is what makes Angular very easy for someone to get started. And finally, the tooling that it has with the Angular CLI that you can install globally into your computer, which is a command line interface, as most of us know, for Angular projects. Recently, there was a new addition in the tooling section, which is the Angular DevTools, that allows you to debug and profile your Angular applications from the ease of your Chrome browser. So that was the reasons. That was what I'm trying to achieve by writing this book. So now I will start giving you an overview of each chapter and what it tries to do. So, in the first chapter, the first chapter is called Creating Your First Web Application in Angular. Actually, it's a very introductory chapter, and the reason is that I wanted to give the readers a very gentle introduction with a very simple Hello World application. So this chapter first explains to you the basic concepts of the Angular framework. Of course, there is a misconception about the concepts of Angular, right? Usually, the main parts of the Angular application are the components, the modules, and the services. You need these three to start building a very simple Angular application, but I hear many times that they say that the main building block of the Angular application is a module, which I don't agree with that, because the basic building block is a component. An Angular application is made of a tree of components, not modules. Modules are used just to group your components under a single functionality. And that is why recently there was a pull request in the Angular repository that they have written some code to start investigating how to make ng modules optional. Not eliminate them completely, but make it optional. So if someone doesn't want to use them, he can opt out, right? So in this chapter, I explain what is a component, what is a module, what is the service, what is the purpose of the service, how do you inject it, very, very basics. And then I go through the Angular CLI commands, the basic commands, right? For example, how to create a new Angular application with ngnew or the generate command. After that, I explain some Visual Studio Code extensions that make Angular development very easy. For example, there is the Angular Essentials pack from John Papa that contains a lot of other extensions that are very handful when you develop with Angular. There is also the Angular Evergreen extension that if you don't know it, I think it's relatively new in the field, and it allows you to stay up to date with the Angular version. For example, when you install it and you open an Angular application, it will prompt you whether you need to update your local Angular application, the project, or not. And it has a lot of other good stuff. I will show it to you in the code later. And also there is the NX console, which I prefer to work with because it gives you a graphical user interface over the Angular CLI. So I'm not a fan of the terminal. I don't want to type, so I use the NX console to make my life easier when developing with Angular. So after the Visual Studio Code extensions, I showed to the reader how to scaffold a very, very simple Angular application with an ng-new, and then we go through, make a simple change into this Angular application. For example, change the title that the skeleton application has. Because if you remember, when you type ng-new and pass the name of the application, the Angular CLI runs and scaffolds a very basic skeleton application. Now then, we go to the template of this application and change just the title. And the reader will see that when they change the title and hit save, the application refreshes and you get your change in front of your eyes. And this is what change detection actually does. So a very brief introduction of how to create a very simple Angular application and a small tip from the change detection mechanism. So if we would like to see this as a screenshot, this is the screenshot that you get from chapter 1. It is the usual Angular application that we all know when we hit ng-new and the name of the application. Let me show you one of those extensions, which is the Angular Evergreen. Okay, here I have a very simple application. This is actually the application that you get from the chapter 1. This icon here is the Angular Evergreen extension that I talked about. If I click on it, you can see that it contains two main panes. The top pane is it indicates which versions you currently have in your project and which versions are available right now from the NPM. And also there is a next version. And on the top, on the bottom pane, there are commands so that you can update your Angular application without going to terminal. For example, there is a command here that says update Angular CLI and core. If I click this run icon, it will start updating my application. Now, a very nice addition to this extension is if you have it installed, you can go to the angular.json file, right click, and you get here two options. The first one is check for updates, and the other is check for updates with the next version of Angular. If I click them, it actually runs ng-update under the hood, and it displays to you which libraries needs update. And that's it all from chapter 1. It is a very basic chapter, so let's continue with chapter 2. Okay.
Thanks, Aris. We're all installing that extension right now.
I'm very happy that you are engaging with that. Okay, let's go to the next chapter. Next chapter, I tried to build a single page application with Scully and Angular Router. For those that don't know Scully, This is Scully. Scully is the first static website generator for Angular that was ever built. In my chapter, I didn't just build an application with Scully, but I built a blog with Scully. So this SPA application that I'm talking about is actually a blog, and it is built with Scully, Angular Router, and Bootstrap CSS.
Hey, I just have a quick question. Is this similar to like Gatsby for React?
I really don't know because I don't
think
know.
I could,
I don't know
I
many
could help
things
there.
about React. I would say more like WordPress.
Okay.
So yeah, I can help a little bit there, Ronan. Gatsby does do sort of flat file generation, and it could potentially be configured to run Angular. Does it have an Angular plugin? Does Gatsby? I'm not sure.
Yeah, like I do mostly Angular, but I created my website with Gatsby, which with React. But I've been looking for something similar, a static site web generator for Angular.
This is the one then. Okay, this works straight off the bat. I'll get out of Aris's way.
Yeah. Tom, can we take another question from Adam?
Oh, please, you go ahead. You've got the floor.
Okay.
Everybody answered my questions. Thank you.
Okay, no problem, no problem. So let me change to my slides. Okay, so actually it is a blog application, right? So Scully needs the Angular router in order to use the blog functionality that it has. So first, I go through how to configure your routing configuration. And then I create my components according to a module hierarchy where we have the core module and the shared module. For example, in the core, I put the navbar of the application. And in the shared, for example, I put the footer or a copyright component. After that, the features of the application are created using lazy loading with the Angular router. So after I have created, the flow of the chapter is, after we have created the modules and the components of the blog, we start installing Scully using schematics. Scully is very easy to install, I promise you. It has schematics for installing, for generating. Everything is automated. They have done such a great job. So Scully is based on the Jamstack architecture. If we could say, Ronan, that it is the Jamstack representative of Angular. No, it is the representative of Angular to the Jamstack sector, right? So after we have installed Scully and run the schematics, we add the blogging support, because you can't just install blogging support into Scully. You just need first to install it, then to generate, to use some schematics to scaffold some files, and then to add the blogging support. This blogging support is also accomplished with schematics. So everything is schematics in Scully. The developer doesn't need to think anything. You just type the commands and the Angular CLI will do it for you. Now, in this blog, the content is written in Markdown syntax, but this is not obligatory. I think that there is also syntax with text files, if I'm right. But there is an alternate syntax for anyone that doesn't want to use Markdown. But I find Markdown pretty easy to use. So after we have installed Scully and we have added our blogging support, we have created a couple of Markdown documents, then we execute Scully. Now, Scully, it generates two versions of your application. The live one, the Angular one, and the pre-rendered one. which actually contains all the content pre-rendered into your disk. It is like SSR that I see in the chat that someone mentions, but with client-side pre-rendering, because SSR is server-side rendering. We will talk about SSR later. So you have these two versions of your application, and you can take the statically pre-rendered and upload it to your server, and then you will have your blog. If you want to have a look, this is what it looks like. This is not the finished product, it's actually a screenshot. For example, you have the navbar, which is inside the core modules with your links. On the bottom, you have your copyright component, which is on the shared module. And in the middle, you have your router outlet that loads Scully loads blog posts using Scully, right? I will show you a quick snippet from this project. Oh. Okay, let me see. Oops, wrong folder, sorry. Okay, so when Scully runs, it creates a configuration file, which is this one. Now, this configuration file contains all the routes of your application. So it inspects your route configuration, extracts the routes, and creates the actual content that corresponds to these routes, and put it in the dist folder. This is auto-generated every time you run Scully. Scully also has a service that you can use when you work with blog posts, and it actually can get the blog posts for you and display it on your template. For example, in the articles component, if you see, we have an ng-for loop that iterates over our blog posts. Now, when we say blog post, one blog post is one markdown file, right? So it iterates and displays a title and description. Now, how we can iterate over the blog post? There is a Scully routes service, this one here. It contains an available $observable that we can subscribe to it and get all the available blog posts. Now, each blog post is a markdown file, as you can see, that contains the actual content and some metadata. Now, this metadata can be used in your blog so that you can display in the readers of your blog the title, the description, and other metadata. You can also add other metadata if you want here. I explain how in the book. So that was it about Scully. Is there any question? No. All right, let's continue to the third one. The third one is about reactive forms. And actually, we built an issue tracking system using reactive forms. And I used for this case a UI library, which is called Clarity Design, and it is built from VMware team. Let me show the link for you. Now here is the library. I find it very interesting. It has very nice components, especially I used the grid component to display the list of issues in my tracking system, and also the form controls. and they have a very clear and from a UI UX perspective, very good structure. So this issue tracking system is a CRUD application. For example, you can create a new issue in the system. You can read it. You can fetch all the issues of the system. You can delete some issue, and to update one also. But the update feature is not described in the book. It is available as an exercise for you to do it. So I show you how to do the create, the read, and the delete, and you do the update similarly. Also, in this chapter, I talk about how to communicate between components. And how do we do this? With input and output decorators, right? When we want to pass data to a component, we use the at input. When we want to get data from the component, we use the at output. So I use it extensively in this chapter because I want to show the reader how to communicate, how to transfer data between the components. Also, I use Form Builder to build the reactive forms, and there is also a way on how to validate. Actually, Clarity Design has a very nice validation that the developer doesn't need to do anything. You just pass some properties and it does the validation for you. So let me show you a couple of controls from the project. Right. So in this template is the template of the issue list, of the list of the issues. You can see that we use the CLR data grid, which is the grid from the Clarity Design, and each column is mapped to a specific property from an interface. So it is very easy to create a grid. I found it more easier than from the Angular material, which I'm a very big fan from the Angular material. And also it has a very nice feature that you can add a drop down, a context menu in each row of your grid using this action overflow component. So it is like in each row, you have a button with 3 dots and you click it and you get a drop-down menu so that you can apply actions to the row. For the forms controls, I used first, let me show you how it looks like, the grid. So it is this one. Where is it? No, it's not this one. Let me find. Oh, here it is. The data grid component. Here, this is a simple data grid. This is how it looks like also in the chapter. And if I find this menu, this context menu that I was talking about, overflow. Yeah, here it is. Can you see the GIF? This button on the left of the row is the actual action overflow that I was talking about. So you can add this element and add some actions that you want to take for your data in each row. I found it very easy, especially for deleting and for resolving an issue. I used it to add 2 actions. The first one was to edit an issue, and the second one was to resolve the issue. And on the other hand, I used the forms. Let me show you also the form controls. Yeah, here it is. I will show to you in my slides. Wait. Yeah, this is how it looks. This is the report an issue form, where you have the title, the description, priority, okay, because we are all developers, we need to have priorities for our issues, and there is also a type, bug, documentation, feature. So this is a form how to create the issue. I think the design and the look and feel, I find it very, very welcome into my eyes. I think Clarity Design it is a good library for someone to consider when starting a new project. Right. So I will show you one more snippet, which is from a feature that the chapter contains. It shows you how to turn on suggestions when reporting an issue, because we all know that when we want to report an issue, this issue may have been reported, so we don't, it's not good to duplicate things. So I have created in this issue report, where is it? Let me find it. Yeah. In this line here, when someone enters the title of an issue, I subscribe to the value changes observable from the reactive forms, and I call the get suggestions method from the issue service. The result of the get suggestions is set in this suggestions property, and this suggestions property is of type issues. So when you start writing a title from an issue, it goes and checks, is there an issue with a similar title? If we go to the get suggestions method, for example, this is a method that checks, that searches how to find a similar issue. Any questions about that, about the chapter 3 with the reactive forms? So what you actually get is you have a CRUD application. You can create an issue, you can report an issue, you can delete an issue if it is invalid. You can have suggestions from each issue, so that you don't duplicate things. Yes, Tom?
Hi there. I'm just wondering, because you use Clarity's form components, you mentioned the form builder. Is the form builder from Clarity as well, or did you code that yourself?
No, the form builder is the standard form builder that we use from the Angular framework.
Oh, right. So sorry, when you said builder, I wondered if it was a dynamic one. That was it.
Yeah. It integrates very well with Angular Reactive Forms Clarity Design. You can have a very good integration.
Do you do any customization of the Clarity's form components in this demo?
No, not at all. I just used the as it is.
Thank you. All right.
Yes or no?
So I've used reactive forms a lot, just the default ones from Angular. Is it the exact same with Clarity? Like you just set the form control and it automatically hooks it up?
I don't understand your question. Can you clarify a bit?
Can you just show where you actually hook up the form control with the form builder to the Clarity component?
Yeah, so here it is. In here.
Okay, form control main title. So it looks the exact same.
Yeah. It is like it looks very, very similar to the Angular material. In the Angular material, we have mat input. In this, in the Clarity Design, we have CLR input. So some things are similar, yeah. And they also have this CLR control error that it is displayed when the control has some error, for example, when the validation fails. All right. Chapter 4. If you are a person that loves weather, I am not. So if you're a person that loves weather, I have created a weather application using there is an API which is called Open Weather API. And you can use it you can register and get an API key, and you can use it in your application to get weather for a city or cities. There are many, it has many combinations that you can use. I can show you the link. Okay, see this one. I will post the link also in the chat. So you just register with this API, you get your key, and then you can start using it in your applications. Now, in my case, I created an application just for one city, Athens, but actually not. I'm so sorry. There is a search bar in the application, so you just enter the name of your city, and it displays to you basic weather information, very basic. I don't go into much detail. For example, humidity, degrees, temperature, wind speed, very basic things. So for this one, I chose to use the Angular material because I thought that having a text box for searching, and on the bottom having a weather card looks like a lot like the card component of Angular material. So I said to myself, okay, why don't I use Angular material? So I installed it. Angular material is very easy to install. There are it has also schematics that they automate most of the process. And I built the application. First, I created the user interface. I integrated with Angular material. And then I started to use Angular Service Worker. I used it for, actually, for those that don't know, Angular Service Worker is a JavaScript file, a single JavaScript file that runs in another thread from your application, and can do a lot of things. For example, it can synchronize data with your server. It can send push notifications to your application. For example, in my case, I used it to provide offline mode into my application. Now, I should note that when I say offline mode, I mean not keep also data offline, but the shell of my application was offline. So even if you don't have a network connection, when you open the application, you just get the shell of the application, but you don't get any data. I mean, you can do it, but this is not the purpose of this chapter. The second feature that I added, except of the offline mode, was to enable in-app notifications inside the application, and especially update notifications. For example, if there is a newer application, if there is a newer version of the application, the service worker will pop up a toast or a snack bar, as we say it in Angular material, and will alert the user that there is a newer application. There's a newest version of the application that you are seeing. So you can hit OK, update my application in the snack bar, and it will reload and will show you the new application. I used Firebase to host my application. Firebase also contains very useful schematics. I literally did nothing for deploying to Firebase except for creating an account. I will show it to you now. I will show you a code that is concerned with the offline mode and the in-app notifications. So actually the offline mode was, I didn't code anything. I just installed the Angular service worker and everything worked by default. So I will show to you code from the in-app notifications. By the way, if you install the Angular service worker with there is a schematic which is called Angular PWA. If you install it, you will get some extra files in your solution explorer. For example, this one, which is the configuration of the Angular service worker, or for example, where is it? Or the manifest file. This manifest file is used from a progressive web application when you're going to customize the title, the colors, because we shouldn't forget that a progressive web application can be installed on the device, right? So if we go to the code, which is where, no. Where is it? Okay, let me find it. Okay, here it is. Inside the NgRx hook of my app component, I use the SW update service and particularly the available observable. I subscribe to it. Now, this available observable will emit when there is a new version of your application. So then I use the switch map operator to open my snack bar and say to the user, okay, a new version of the application is available. Do you want to update it now? So if the user clicks yes in the snack bar, we use the updates service and call the activate update method to start updating our application. And after the update has finished, we reload the history, we reload the URL of our application so that the new version will be reflected to the so that the change will be reflected to the user. This is how you can get a push notification, an update push notification inside a progressive web application with Angular. So easy. Now, to be honest, in this project, the code that I used for the Angular service worker was about 20% of the application. The other percent was creating services, creating components, creating my templates, stuff that we do every day, right? Let's continue. Here is a screenshot from the progressive web application when you want to install it locally in your system. Because progressive web applications have, I think most of us already know it, they have this plus icon on the URL bar that when you press it, it installs the web application as a desktop one. So you can see, I talked before about cross-platform, right? Until this chapter, we're talking about running Angular applications in different platforms. We have seen Scully, we have seen progressive web apps. Now we will see an Electron, how to run a desktop application with Electron. Later we will see server-side render. So it's all about platforms, how you run an Angular application in different platforms. Which is what most of the clients, if you're a freelancer, need today. Okay, chapter 5. Chapter 5 is a topic that I really love. It is about Electron and how to create desktop applications with Angular and Electron. Now, If you want to learn about Electron, I have made a lot of talks. I have also a library which is called NgRx Electronify. I will share it very quickly here. Now this library, you can hook it, you can install it into an Angular CLI application, and it will run your Angular application as a desktop application in a desktop native window. So in this chapter, I'm building what you see is what you get editor for the desktop with Electron and Angular. Actually, in this chapter, there is a lot of boilerplate code that is not related with Angular, because there is not a way of integrating, there is not an easy way of integrating Angular and Electron. Because Electron is TypeScript, Angular has its own way of building. For example, Angular is built with Angular CLI. Angular CLI uses Webpack. And in this chapter, I managed to integrate Webpack and make it to work in both ways. So if you read this chapter, expect it to have a lot of boilerplate code and third-party libraries. So the library that I used for the WYSIWYG editor is a library called NgXWYG, which is this one. It has been created from another GDE, which is a friend of mine. Where is it? Okay, here it is. And first, I use this library and render the WYSIWYG editor as a web application. Then, I integrate Electron inside the web application and make them communicate each other. Because if you have a WYSIWYG editor, you need to find a way for communicating data from the editor to the Electron application and back, because the Electron application is concerned with the file system and the web application is concerned with the look and feel. So I needed to create some file system interaction between both applications. And finally, when we have the WYSIWYG editor and we can write content and we can see the content to be persisted on our disk and back and forth, then I package the application as a desktop one. So you get a single executable file. So you get your application as a single executable file, and you can take it everywhere. I will show you some code which is concerned with how we communicate between the Angular and the Electron. So I have created Electron. I mean, when you want to communicate with Electron in Angular, you need to have access to the main window, the window object. So I have used a method which is called injection token in Angular and exposed the window object. Actually, I made the window object injectable so that I can use it in my services. For example, in this service, you can see that I inject the window, which is type of Electron window. This Electron window is this injection token that I have created. Injection token is used when you have something that you want to make it injectable into Angular. For example, if you want to make the document, there is also an injection token. I can't remember any other property. So here I inject the window that I have created with injection token, and I use a special property which is called IPC renderer. And I call the method invoke. Now this method, it is used to write the content to your disk. And this method, getContent, is used to read content from the disk. when our application calls this method here, it actually communicates with another object similar to the IPC renderer in the Electron application and saves the content. The actual application looks like this. You can see that there is a standard WYSIWYG editor that you can write, but in this chapter, we take it further, and whatever you write in this window, it is saved in your disk, and vice versa. In the next chapter, I think this chapter is the biggest of all. I created a mobile photo geotagging application using Capacitor of Ionic and 3D maps. If we wanted to say more simple, the application allows you to take a photo with your mobile, upload it, and view it on the real world. For example, inside Google Earth. So first, what I did, I used Ionic to scaffold a mobile application, and then I integrated the capacitor, which is built with Ionic. First, to take a photo from the camera, and second, to read the GPS location. Because if you want to visualize something in the real Earth, you need coordinates. So Capacitor allowed me to do two things. First, to take the photo with my camera, and second, to take the coordinates of where I am when I take the photo. So it takes these two types of information, and saves them into Firebase. Actually, it saves them in two places. The first one is for the photos, I used the storage service of Firebase. And for the GPS coordinates, I used the Cloud Firestore, which is a new database of the Firebase family. For the interaction with the Firebase, I used the Angular Fire library. And most of the setup in this chapter was done using the online dashboard applications for Firebase or for Ionic. Actually, I didn't code so much to scaffold and set up things. For example, I used the dashboard of Firebase to create my database and to access the storage service. So after I saved all my data into Firebase, I used another library which is called Cesium.js, which is this one. Cesium.js. Hold on. Now, this library is a JavaScript library that allows you to interact with a 3D globe of the Earth. So after I have saved all the information into Firebase, I used this JavaScript library and downloaded I made some requests to get the data and display them on a real Earth. So the output was something like this. My application has two modes. The first mode is to take the photo. The second mode is to view the gallery. So in view gallery, you get this Earth. And if you have taken photos, you will see some pins on this Earth. Each pin is your photo. You can click on the pin and see the photo. I will show you some code regarding the capacitor integration, which I think it is very interesting. To complete this application, you need to have Android Studio or Xcode. Disclaimer, this chapter does not cover what you need to do with your native IDE, but there are useful links at the end on how to configure if you need any help. So if we go to the camera, to the photo service, this is actually the snippet that you use to get a camera using Capacitor. You use the camera plugin. There is a plugin called Camera from Capacitor, and you call the get photo method. You set the result type to be data URL so that it can be saved to Firebase. The source will be your camera. Alternatively, you can use as a source your gallery of your phone. The quality, we want to be very good quality. And then if you call this one, it will open your camera, it will ask you for permissions, and it will take the photo. And then it will save it to Firebase. To get the location of your phone, it's even easier. It's this line here. Sorry, it's this one. Is it? Yeah, this one. You use the geolocation plugin of Capacitor and call the get current position method, and you're good to go. So I have the coordinates. I have the camera. I'm good to go. I save it, and then I open my gallery inside my application, fetch the data using the Angular file library, which is observable based, so it is very familiar for an Angular developer, and display them on the map. I really enjoyed writing this chapter, actually. The next chapter, 7, there are 10 chapters in the book. The next chapter was, I tried to build a clone of the GitHub profile page of a user using server-side rendering. So I used the GitHub API to interact. I used the old GitHub API, not the GraphQL, and which is RESTful. And then after I created my page, where when you go to your GitHub profile page, what do you see? You see on the left your photo, some statistics, and on the right you have your repositories and your organizations. So it looks like GitHub profile page, but it's not. After I created my application with Angular, then I integrated the Angular Universal library. Angular Universal allows you, it is similar to Scully that I talked before, and it allows you to run your application in server-side rendering. And not only server-side rendering, but there is actually a command which is called pre-render. And if you run it, you get also a client pre-rendered version of your application, similar to Scully. Please, in this chapter, I used my GitHub username. You can use yours and the API to fetch data. So if you go through this chapter, you need to pay attention that when you run the pre-render command, you need to have set your username and the GitHub API URL correctly, because when you run the client pre-rendering of Angular Universal, it actually goes to the GitHub API, fetches data, creates your page, and it is ready. Also, I teach how to duplicate, how to share state between your pre-rendered version of your application and your server-side rendered, because if you pre-render an application, the Angular application with client pre-rendering, first, as I said, it makes a request to fetch the data and create the actual content in the disk. But if you open the pre-rendered version, which is static HTML, it will do another HTTP call again for the same data. So to avoid that, there is a technique which is called how to share state between a server and the client. It is explained in this chapter, and also there are some SEO practices. For example, how to use the title service that Angular has to set the title of your window, or how to use the meta service, which is used to add some meta tags in your HTML. This is a snippet, a screenshot of one of the different parts of the application. Actually, this one is the one that displays the list of your repositories. There is also another one that displays the list of organizations, and another one that shows your personal information. If we go to the code, you will see how I use the title service, which is inside the app component. So here I use the title service. The title service is built into the framework. It is in the platform browser, and it contains a set title method. And when you call it and pass a title, the title will be displayed on the top of your window. And then there is a meta service that is used to add meta tags into your HTML. For example, here I add the description of the description in my index HTML and the author. So these are some SEO techniques that you can use in your server-side rendered application to have better discoverability when someone shares your application through social networks. I hope I haven't missed anyone having any question. If you see someone, Tom, just let me know.
You do fine, Aris.
Because I'm on fire right now, I'm in a good shape. Okay, so chapter 8, it's how to use NX monorepo and NgRx. I think this is a very good combination if you want to start working with monorepo architecture. In this chapter, I first use the NX CLI to create a monorepo application. And then my application, actually, let me talk a bit about this application. This application is destined for someone that wants to visit some places on a map. So you have Google Maps, you're a visitor, right? You open the application, you have Google Maps. On the left, you have a list of exhibits. So when you click on exhibit, on a point of interest, it will show you, it will drop a marker on the map, and you can click on the marker and see a photo of this point of interest, and maybe, I think, with a link to Wikipedia. So this is one aspect of the application. The other aspect of the application is it can be used from an administrator to see the statistics about each visit on this point of interest list. So we're talking about two applications, one for the visitor, one for the administrator. And that is why it is a good fit for creating a monorepo application, because you need to have two applications and a shared library that communicates with these two applications. So we actually have two separate portals, the visitor portal and the administrator portal. I also used Angular material here because the layout looks like a dashboard in Angular material, and Angular material contains a handful of schematics that you can use to create specific layouts. This is what I used. I also I use the NgRx to share state. For example, when you click on the when you click on the list of the point of interest, I use NgRx to communicate the selection to the map, and vice versa. I used Google Maps to display markers on a map, and then the administrator, in the administrator side, I used a library called ngCharts to display visit statistics in a pie diagram. In this chapter, I used most of the NgX CLI commands and schematics. I can assure you that it is very easy to scaffold this application. I was based on an article from, I don't remember his name. He was one of the core authors of NgRx. Brandon Roberts, sorry. So I used his article and Yes, Tom.
Hi there. I've used a few of those schematics myself. They're quite there's quite a lot of them to sort of generate a single slice of state. Have you tried the actual NX generate NgRx command?
Yes, this is the one that I used. I used the NgRx schematics that are inside the NX.
Oh, right. Not the NgRx schematics that you can install.
No. Yeah.
Right. Good. Yeah, because I recommend the NX one because it's much quicker. You get a lot.
Me
out of the box.
Me too. Yeah. It reduces a lot of boilerplate code. So this is what it looks like. This is actually when you select a point of interest from the list, you get a marker on the map and when you click on the marker, you get a photo. This is actually a photo from Acropolis. Acropolis is one of the famous exhibits here in Athens. So if you pay a visit in our country, do not miss that. You should go and check it out if you haven't already. Right. Oh, so I forgot to show you some code from this one. Let's see the code on what happens when you select a point of interest from the list. You see here the structure is the standard structure of an NX application, monorepo. So if I go to libs, because the portals that I have created, the administration portal and the visitor portal, are all libs in the world of NX. There is only one app, the main app. So if I go to the visitor lib and I go to the POI list component, you can see that I'm using the select method of the NgRx store, and I pass a selector to get the list of point of interest. And then if I click on a point of interest from the list, I call the select point method, and the select point dispatches a select point action passing the ID of the point. I think it's in this chapter the code was very simple. The hard work was to generate and scaffold all the libs, all the NX parts, as Tom said. But the NX schematics and the NgRx schematics that exists inside the NX CLI are very, very helpful. Also, I can show you how this application counts visit to each point of interest. If we go to the POI lib, we have a service. Oh, this is not here, sorry. It is in the effects. Yes, right. Actually, when you click on a point of interest, an effect is called, and it goes to the local storage. I chose to use local storage here to make it simpler. It goes to the local storage and increments the specific point of interest with a specific ID, and then it writes it again to the local storage. Very easy, nothing fancy here. So every time you click on a point of interest, you increment the visit number, right? So your point of interest marks a high rank in the visit statistics. So up to chapter 8, most of the chapters are quite large, about 20 or 30 pages. So the book starts simple with reactive forms, with Scully. It goes advanced with server-side rendering, with NX with what else? With Electron, and then it goes down with more simpler examples. So in chapter 9, I'm teaching how to create a very simple component UI library using the Angular CLI and the Angular CDK. Actually, I have built two components. The first one is a list, is a card list that you can drag and drop, and you can reorder the items. And the second one is how to work with clipboard interaction, how to work with clipboard. I use the Angular CLI to create libraries. I chose not to use the NX so that I can demonstrate the power of Angular CLI for creating libraries. And I used a CSS framework which is called Bulma CSS. I didn't know about that, but a friend of mine told me. And it was very interesting. I will post the link on the chat. I have used it since then a couple of times, and I really like the component that contains. Right. So in this chapter, after we built the component UI library using the Angular CLI, as I said, there is the drag and drop list and the clipboard. Now, all these interactions are contained inside the Angular CDK, the content development kit. The Angular CDK is used to create behaviors and interactions irrespectively of the framework that you are using. But it has been used to create Angular material from the Angular team. But it's okay to use it with any CSS framework that you want. So after we create the library, we convert it to Angular elements so that you can use the components in other frameworks, actually not other frameworks, in vanilla JavaScript as well. And I use the famous library NgRx build plus from my friend Manfred Steyer to build the library as Angular elements. This library, NgRx build plus, allows you to, it contains a lot of convenient commands, because the problem is that when you create an Angular element, the element will contain all the framework inside it. So with NgRx build plus, there is a specific way to call it and run it, and it strips down, it strips up all the framework, not all the framework, I mean, it keeps only the components that it needs. This is how the clipboard component looks like. You have a text box and you have a button copy. So when you click on the copy button, the content of the text box is copied to the clipboard. I will show you some code on that. Yes, Devalaya.
Hey, first of all, great job with the chapters. I mean, it really seems interesting. I was just wondering, in this chapter where you build a component library, and component library is something which pretty much every company does nowadays. But the most difficult thing there to build is a select component, which I feel. Like the normal way that something like an ng bootstrap does is pass all the options as a property. But that's not a very good way, because your options might have different templates. So I think the way Angular Material does is the best way. So I was wondering, do you have a chapter for creating drop downs in this one, or do you have a section in this chapter?
No, for drop downs, no. But to be honest, there is an example of that in the first edition of the book.
Okay, thanks.
As far as I can remember, it creates a select component, but not with Angular CDK. It creates, I think, oh yes, it's with Angular CDK. So if you go to the first edition, you can check it out. But the first edition is outdated.
Right.
Thanks for your feedback, though. Maybe I will take a note so that maybe in a new, if I update the book, I can. It would be interesting to add such an example.
Yes, please. Thanks. That'd be great.
Thank you, Malaya. Thank you for your feedback. Okay, so let's see some code in this topic. Hold on. Okay, let's see how we convert an Angular library into an Angular element. It's very easy, actually. If we go to the app module, you can see that it contains a method called ngDoBootstrap. This method we call the create custom element method from the Angular elements package, and we pass as a first parameter the component that we want to convert to an Angular element, and the second parameter is an object that contains the injector, because when the component is converted into an Angular element, it needs to have an injector, so that it needs to find all the other pieces that it needs. And then you use the custom elements method, the define method from the custom elements, and you give it the HTML tag that we want to use for your custom element. So anytime then, every time you declare an HTML element as a copy dash button into your HTML, it will render this element on the screen, and it will be actually an Angular element, an Angular component disguised as an Angular element. So the last chapter, which it was very interesting for me, it is how to customize Angular CLI commands. For example, you are a company, you are a team leader, or you are a senior developer, and you need to you want to customize the schematics of Angular for your team. For example, you don't want when someone generates a component to have a unit test file. That's okay. You can use the schematics API of the Angular CLI to create your own custom schematic component. You can create it from scratch, or even better, you can override it so that you get all the functionality of the component schematic, but you modify it a bit according to your needs. In this chapter, this is what I did. Actually, I did both ways. First, I used the schematics API to teach how to generate a component using a schematic from scratch without using the component schematic of Angular. And in the second way, I used it to teach how to create an Angular service generation schematic, but I invoke the built-in schematic of Angular along with mine. Let me show you some code. I will show you the service one. So here it is. Let's focus on this command. Now, all this function is what the schematic does. So if you create the function and build it and convert it according to the book, you will have your own schematic commands, right? So this function at the end, it calls the service schematic of Angular, as you can see from this namespace here, and it passes some options. These options are customized from me, and then I merge it with the template source. The template source contains my custom schematic files. So runs the schematic, the service schematic of Angular, merges it with my schematic business logic, with the logic of my schematics, and overrides the built-in schematic. I would like something to say here, but I forgot it. What I would like to say? I forgot it, sorry. Generally, the schematics API is very complicated. There isn't much information on the web. Also, in the documentation, the documentation has a fair amount of information. This is where I went to learn how to do schematics, because you see, this book, actually, it was a challenge. It was a challenging experience for me, because most of these techniques, I didn't know about them. I didn't know server-side rendering. I didn't know schematics. I didn't know what else? NX monorepo and NgRx. So by writing this book, I had also the opportunity to learn something new. So it was very enjoyable. I would like to thank all the people that helped me write it, from my team at Pact Pub, which is a company, Pact Publishing, which is a company that publishes the book. Also, Sander Elias from the Scully team reviewed the chapter of Scully, and Mike Hardington from the Ionic team reviewed the chapter with the Ionic. I thank them all. And also the Angular team, and especially Mark Thompson, that wrote the foreword for me. So thank you all for viewing my talk. I'm very happy to answer any question that you may have. So.
I see we've got one hand up, Aris.
Yes, Malaya, sorry.
I just have one question. Where would I get a copy of this book?
Okay. I think you joined early. You joined late, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you look in the chat history, you should be able to see some stuff there.
I think I can only see from the time I joined. Sorry.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Also, Tom, I also published it in the meeting event.
Yeah, sure. We could actually add some links. I
did already.
Yeah,
I added them.
That's great. I think we might need to add them again for latecomers, so they can see it in the chat history, because it's limited to when they join.
Let me add the link to the event, and the links are there.
Lovely.
All right, hold on one second.
I added also the link in the chat, and the Malaya you can get if you go to this link and follow these instructions. You will get a 30% discount off the ebook version of the book. This is for ebooks, and it is valid until 11th of August 2021. Also, I would like to say, Tom, that if anyone reads the book and has some feedback, and especially negative feedback, I would like to know it, even in public, because I'm trying to find ways to improve myself all the time.
I might help you out there. I've just bought your book, so I'll
thanks, Tom. That's nice.
I'm also about to buy it as well.
Thank you, guys.
Is it valid until when, you said? I put it November 2021, November 1st.
Sorry, can you say again?
What is the validation of the coupon? Is it until August 11th? Okay.
August 11th, yeah.
All right, let me change that in the on the link that I just posted there.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Any other question?
I've got one, if I may.
Of course.
I should have put my hand up, actually. Sorry about that, Aris. Okay, NgRx, all right. It's great to hear from someone who's written a section of a book about it, right, and written how to scaffold it in the quickest way possible, most productively. So I'd like to ask you, when should we use NgRx?
Actually, never. You're asking, Tom, you're asking the wrong person. I just don't like state management. To be honest, I like to be honest. I don't like state management. I think it is destined for limited situations. When I start a project, there are sometimes we as a developer, when we start a project, we think at once, I will incorporate state management. No, that's not the case. You don't need to go without considering first what my app is going to do, how it's going to behave. So, especially in the industry that I'm active, which is the mapping industry, because in the company that I work, we work with maps, with geo-information, geolocation data, and stuff like that. So if you have something like a dashboard, like in the chapter with the NgRx, where you need to click on a list and respond to another place in another component of your application, but this application, the two applications are not descendant, then you need state management. But just don't put all the state inside NgRx. Put only this slice and this type of information that interests you. This is the biggest mistake that most developers do. They just put all the object, all the information in the state.
Thank you. I second that. Yeah, you've got to keep local, state local.
Yeah. Actually, NgRx, I don't cover this in my book. NgRx has a library called Component Store that I have seen that it is a good alternate when you want to have local state inside your components.
Actually, Aris, I do a presentation on that subject. If you want one for your Athens meetup.
Sure, yeah. This is very interesting. I mean, and it is relatively new. Yes, the Malaya. Do you have any question?
Oh no, I just had a small take on the subject of NgRx. So a practical example we just came across was during the development of our app, we had the condition which you said, that there was some state which was shared between a whole lot of places, like a whole lot of components. First, we tried with subjects and behavior subjects and services. So there came a point where it was no longer possible to elegantly maintain behavior subjects and services. So that's when we made a conscious decision to switch to a state management solution. That's how we go about it. Like, see if it can be done with behavior subjects. No, go to state management.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I would totally go to that direction. If you, as the Malaya said, if you can't maintain all these behavior subjects, then go for NgRx. Or you can use also NgXS, right? There are also other alternatives. But I made the question someday to Dan Wallin, if you know Tom Dan Wallin. He has created a library, a state management library that is based on observables. I think it's called Observable Store. It was presented in the previous or last year NgConf. And I asked him, which library should I use for state management between the three? And he told me, start simple and then adjust according to your needs. So as the Malaya started with behavior subject. At some point, he saw that it was very difficult to maintain. So he installed a library for that. So I think this is the way to go. Good point, Malaya. Other question. Yeah, NgRx. Yeah, Tom, I would like also to thank my sister because she's on the chat today with us. She doesn't know anything about Angular, but I would like to thank her for her support.
That's right. Thanks very much. I know nothing, but I've learned a few things.
I wondered if you were a relation when you came in, actually, Kat. So
Yes.
so nice to have you here.
Thank you a lot.
I will try to make her an Angular developer. Don't promise, but I will try.
Is there any more questions for Aris? Well, I think you've done a pretty good job, Aris. Okay. It's an impressive book. I opened it whilst you were walking through it, and you've got a lot of stuff in there. That's a serious amount of work. I'm looking forward to having a read. I just hope I have the time. Yes. Okay. Well, if anybody has not got any more questions, I think we might take this opportunity to open our microphones and give Aris a bit of a clap if you fancy that. Okay, here we go.
Oh man, thanks guys. Hello. I never thought I would have a round of applause live. Tom,
Totally deserve it.
Excellent.
Tom, you're doing a fantastic job here in Angular Sussex. And I'm looking forward for the next meetup because your content, you know, the content that you present most of the times is not something that you see in other meetups or in an ordinary meetup. For example, once I watched a presentation that you did with configurations. I don't remember. It was
the for your async config, you mean? Yep.
Yeah. I mean, this is a very advanced topic. Not advanced. It's something simple. If someone will show it to you, but it is very handful. I mean, it's very useful.
But we've just had a quick question about ebook readers. I'm wondering if you can help us there, Aris.
Kindly. I'm totally irrelevant with this type of stuff. Generally, I like. So what?
Kindle.
Yes, you're right. There is actually a Kindle app on Android and iOS app stores. So that's definitely an option.
Generally, I think that print books, I don't like to buy a print book for something that changes, right? For example, Angular has a release cycle of 6 months, as I remember. 6 months every release. So I would buy an ebook for Angular and maybe a hard copy book for something more, theoretical, for example, design patterns or something with JavaScript.
I think you're spot on there, Aris. Design patterns is probably the one print edition that's worth keeping because that's actually survived. I think it's something like 24 years in print, and it's one of the few pure code books that have survived that long and are still useful. So, yeah. Well, I think if I may, I'm going to sort of choose this time and say thank you guys so much for coming. It is the audience that makes this. Okay, we appreciate you being here, and we hope you got something out of it. I know I did, and I'd like to thank Aris again for coming. And please do come again and present for us if you fancy it. But you're always welcome as audience as well.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. Thank you very much.
So thanks everyone. Hope you have a good evening, and we'll see you around next time. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.